In the stillness of the golden dunes where the desert carries whispers older than time, there walked a prince whose footsteps left not just marks on the sand, but verses on the soul of every horizon. He was not only a rider of horses nor only a falconer whose birds soared above the world. He was a dreamer, a poet, a lover of silence and of storms, and his name was Hamdan, though the world called him Fazza, for he poured his heart into poems that touched all who listened. The sky would bend its colors when he wrote, the desert would hum with rhythm when he spoke, and the sea, restless and vast, would calm itself at the thought of his words. He was the guardian of tradition, the bearer of pride, but deep within, there was a softness that none but love could awaken. The winds of Dubai carried his soul across the skyscrapers and into the hearts of the people, yet he himself felt most alive when he was away from the crowd, riding a stallion through the night, chasing the moon with nothing but stars as witnesses. The falcons would follow him, the camels would watch in reverence, and the silence of the desert would stretch like a canvas for his unspoken verses. To him, life was more than glory, more than crowns, more than riches. It was about feeling, about heartbeats that echoed truth, about eyes that spoke before the lips could move, about the bond between man and nature, between ruler and land, between poet and beloved. And in those moments, as he sat upon the sand with a notebook in hand, he wrote not for fame but for the unseen heart that would someday read his words and understand him without needing explanation. His poetry was not ornamented with lies but drenched in sincerity, every word carved from the soul of a man who loved deeply, silently, endlessly. Love for him was not just romance, it was devotion. It was the wind carrying the scent of musk across the dunes. It was the glimmer of moonlight on water. It was the fire of loyalty that burned brighter than any flame. His love stretched beyond a person. It embraced his land, his people, his horses, his falcons, his very breath. The world saw him as a prince, but he saw himself as a wanderer searching for something untouchable, something eternal. He longed for a heart that would not bow before his crown but would rise beside him, strong, pure, and fearless. In his poems he often spoke to her, the unseen beloved, as if she was sitting before him beneath the desert sky, her face lit by starlight, her silence louder than any song. He poured his longing into verses. He carved her shadow upon the sand, and he let the desert winds carry her name across the dunes even though he never spoke it aloud. For him, love was sacred, not a tale for gossip but a prayer for eternity. The falcons circled above him, their wings wide like verses unfolding, their eyes sharp like the truth he carried. His horses galloped across the plains, each hoofbeat a heartbeat of poetry, each motion a metaphor of freedom. Beneath the horizon where the sky melts into the amber of the desert, a story of heart and spirit is always being written, and in its center stands the poet whose name is sung like the wind, Fazza, son of the sands, rider of horses, keeper of dreams. His soul was a river that never stopped flowing, and his words were pearls scattered upon the golden expanse, waiting to be gathered by hearts that understood the language of longing. When the sun touched the dunes and painted them in hues of fire, Fazza would rise not as a prince bound by palaces, but as a wanderer bound only by love, by memory, by the eternal call of life that shimmered like a mirage before him. He was the falcon soaring beyond horizons, his wings stitched with courage, his eyes holding visions no ordinary gaze could carry. He was the rider galloping through the night, his steed a shadow of thunder, his breath mingling with the wild scent of desert flowers. Yet he was also the man who sat in silence, looking at the moon with a heart heavy with secrets, writing verses upon the canvas of time, each word a confession, each line a prayer. The world knew him as a leader, but in his verses he was a lover, a dreamer, a voice that whispered of eternity. The desert taught him patience, the sea taught him depth, the stars taught him silence, and love taught him fire. He carried them all within him like treasures uncounted, and whenever his heart grew restless, he set them free in poetry that echoed like the beating of ancient drums. His poems were not merely words. They were doorways into the soul of the land. In every verse the desert breathed, in every rhythm the gallop of horses thundered, in every silence the wings of falcons trembled. and in every sigh the face of a beloved unseen appeared. He walked among his people as one of them, though the crown glittered upon his destiny. He touched the old man's shoulder with warmth. He laughed with the children who ran barefoot across the courtyards. He listened to the fishermen whose boats carried the prayers of dawn. He watched the camel herders who moved slowly like stories told across generations. In his heart, he was never apart from them, for he was not a ruler who stood above, but a brother who stood among, carrying the flame of heritage in his chest. And when he wrote, his verses did not only belong to him, they belonged to the people, to the winds, to the very soul of Dubai. The night was his companion. He would sit upon the edge of silence, pen in hand, watching as the stars unveiled their secrets. The moon would bow gently, spilling its silver across the waves of the Gulf, and Fazza would write. He wrote of longing, longing for a face hidden in the folds of fate, longing for the laughter of someone who lived only in memory, longing for a love that was pure, fierce, and endless. His words would travel like caravans of light, carrying emotions that could not be caged. The dunes became his witnesses, the palm trees his confidants,